morning and welcome back to Catapult Your Career, where we delve into the reality of various careers and explore practical advice for numerous professions. And today we're going to be looking into the world of the tech industry. And I have none other than a good friend who is actually a Chief Tech Officer, a CTO, in Dheeraj. How are you, Dheeraj?
Hi, Michael. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you. And hopefully, of course, the kind of podcast we're going to talk about various things in terms of your role and kind of various past experiences to kind of help listeners if they are looking to transition into that kind of background. So, first and foremost, really, feel free to give us an introduction to yourself and kind of your a brief background.
Yeah, sure. My name is Dheeraj, and as you mentioned, I'm a CTO of Provide Digital. It's a health tech company. We develop softwares primarily to the health sector within UK, and of course with a vision to go global as well. My background is AI, machine learning, software development. In education side of things, I did my bachelor's in biomedical engineering, my master's in electronics and communication engineering, and then my PhD is in primarily in computer science, but focused on AI and machine learning, and working with health tech data during the 3 years of my PhD. Um, yeah, that's me, I suppose.
Amazing. And I feel rather daft now in this room talking to you. You've listed off various kind of the PhD in the AI, machine learning, all the rest of it. Crikey, and that is the sole reason why you were the first person I wanted to kind of come in terms of this space to talk about it, because you have such a wealth of knowledge and insight. So thank you again for joining us. And you mentioned, let's start off with where you are now in terms of that CTO, so that Chief Tech Officer. What is a chief tech officer? If someone's listening, thinking, "Crikey, that sounds like a grand title." What is a CTO?
Well, yeah, you're right. It's hard to understand CTO because it depends on where your company is, and the role of a CTO always changes. If you're a startup and if you have a team of only two people, of course, the CTO is actually going to be working towards the strategies of the company and also developing the code as well. So sometimes,
Mm,
most of the CTOs with startup and with this very small team, they develop themselves as well. And it all depends on where your company is. And in big companies, of course, CTOs are more focused towards creating or managing the whole strategic point of technology side of that particular businesses. And of course they have to work towards helping the business as well, helping making business decisions as well, or strategies as well, in terms of tech perspectives for the company. um, my role specifically is bit in between of two of them. So because Provider is of course a startup, but not with a very small team, because we majorly outsource all our tech things. So my role is of course managing all the technology teams where we develop products parallelly, and also contribute to the technological side of the company as well. Within the startup, there is a key thing for CTO that is, I think, very, very crucial, Michael. That's creating or making sure that the company not only grows towards the tech side of things, but also towards technological architecture of the company. So you build the reputation of the company if it is, of course, a tech primary company. So within Provide Digital, of course, I'm also focusing on over the next few years, to making sure that the company's technology side of things improve a lot in terms of their processes, strategies, and what basically certifications they have in terms of technology, to make sure that the clients, they can trust the company more in
yeah,
future.
I love that. That's a really a really great kind of summary of like the role and how it can differ. And often from even a few people I've spoken to already on the podcast,
Hmm.
it's interesting for people when they're looking at, obviously my field is very much helping people with transitioning careers and finding what they want to do. They talk a lot about job titles, and
Yes.
I always kind of challenge people, because rather than, I always find you might think, oh, I want to be a chief this and a chief that, and you seek the job title. I think the most important for me is to seek the task. So yes, it's a
Yes.
job title, but what tasks are you actually going to be doing? And I love your kind of summary, because actually, yes, you can be a chief tech officer, but if you don't particularly like strategy, the task, and you're at a big company, let's say, that's going to be 60-70% of your job. Whereas if you're at a startup and you love developing products and stuff like that,
Yes.
it might be more familiar to you, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. It depends where you can companies go. You can have same titles, and of course, you will be doing different things.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's true. And speaking about yourself, I suppose personally, like it's interesting. Obviously, people want to go into that tech space and eventually get to perhaps that level. What would you say like the average week looks like? And it's always a tricky question because it's things vary and you have various
Yeah.
prioritization in terms of projects and stuff like that. But what does the kind of average or so week look like for you as a CTO?
I mean, for us, because we are at a stage where we have the products developed and we are in expansion stage. So for me, I mean, most of the time is focusing on creating or helping the business teams to create right strategies for the businesses, and also getting feedback from them as well to make sure that we improve our tech side of things. What is required, for us to make sure that our clients or our products are compliant to clients' needs. So that's where basically right now we are focusing, but in general, my week basically is most of the time is spent with the tech teams, of course, to making sure that everything is running smooth, all the processes are followed, and there is no red flag in the processes. So where we need to make sure that one as well. Also to make sure that we keep assessing our resources, because for CTO, resources are assets for them, and we need to make sure that we keep assessing those resources, that whether they are healthy or not, if there is we see there is an possible concerns are there, so that we can make sure that we have plan B for that one, because the ultimate goal is, of course, for your products to be all time healthy and they're running their life there. And yeah, I mean, part of that one is also, of course, attending a lot of meetings, helping, creating more strategies and, following that processes. Um, a part of my week probably now is more going in terms of improving the technical architecture of the company as well, where we can focus on making sure that the processes, the strategies, they are up to the mark, they are industry standard. Because when you start your company, you can't tick all the boxes from
Yeah.
first day. So you have to gradually look at all these things, and you need to prioritize when it is important, because if you are expansion stage, you need to make sure that all your resources or all the processes and everything is compliant, is actually what is required.
Yeah.
So
No,
yeah, that's typical week.
that makes perfect sense, and it always the bit at the end you just said about kind of
Mm.
working on the business architecture and the kind of structure. I suppose it's quite important, especially for a role like you, because there becomes a gap and a difference where you're not just working in the business, you're working on the business,
Yes.
and so you're not just kind of doing the day to day work and kind of pushing out widgets and all the rest of it. You actually got to work on the business itself, and is it the sustainability of the business? Is it the
Yeah.
direction of the business?
Yes.
Like I'm sure, and I invite you to kind of speak a bit more about it. I mean, your industry is so quick and fast paced that if you're not constantly working on your business and kind of pivoting, I presume you get left behind.
Yeah, absolutely. In all tech companies, speed is the key. That factor actually makes or breaks your business.
Mm,
So if you're slow, you takes time to develop. Somebody else will develop it, and it's an open market. You can't compete, with if there's somebody is faster than you. And but at the same time, of course, we need to make sure that whatever we develop is stable, or whatever we do is stable. They won't fall off because we are just quickly doing things. And a
yeah,
good example is this Titanic submarine. It was
yeah,
done very quickly, and that goes into disaster. So that's also very crucial as well. But yeah, speed is a key here, and also to make sure that we are using most cutting edge technologies as well, and making sure that we what we are using is with a vision of future. So it won't go redundant in next 5 years. So and there are a lot of decision making here involved, Michael, frankly speaking, and a lot of time. Basically, we have to do research as well. So we have some knowledge, of course, but then we have to take more knowledge or expert advice.
yeah, definitely, definitely. And so that you can tell there's a whole lot of variety in that role, and like you said, it's obviously working on kind of internal developments, but also making sure you're kind of adept to changes in industry. And you're right about speed is king, but if you're too quick, it can kill you. And
Yeah.
like that, no one. Well, perhaps certain high. I'm not in the echelons of people to kind of pay money to go and view the Titanic. I haven't quite reached that pay grade just yet. Where here's hoping, but so I wouldn't have been aware of that company anyway. But what, crikey, a vast amount of the population now will be aware of that company because of the mistake it's made. And of course,
Yes.
some people say, all press is good press, but I disagree in this statement, because the only reason why that company's been kind of found out and known is because of a massive kind of challenge or issue that they've had. So yes, speed is key, I suppose, in your role, but especially in that chief pace, I suppose you're managing the balance, aren't you? Yes, you've got to be
Yes.
keen, you've got to get first to the market, but you don't want to get too quick where the stability of the product isn't great and you actually end up delivering a bad reputation for yourself. So
Absolutely, because as a startup, your reputation is the key. Because if you start at a wrong side of the things, of course you are not going along then.
yes,
And especially health vertical is a very small vertical. People knew each other, and reputation is a massive thing. Like in finance sector, reputation is a key. Similar, health is also, reputation is a really key
definitely.
thing for any startup.
So, what are like I suppose, in terms of your role personally, before we then look back on your past and the journey you've taken, especially for other listeners who are kind of aspiring to kind of follow in your footsteps, what are like the most enjoyable, least enjoyable parts of being a chief tech officer for you? What's the best bits and the bad bits?
Well, there are a lot of good bits as compared to bad bits. So that's the first statement I would say. I think most of the good things, and which I think like the most good about my job is constant learning.
Yeah,
So I have to read a lot, connect to the industry a lot, keep my vision very clear, because as a CTO of the company, your vision is the key, which basically drives you, towards achieving goals and doing things. So that's constantly, keeping understanding what is required for that vision, and constantly learning new things. That is a key here.
mm,
Um, and especially when you transition from a tech developer into a CTO, then you realize that strategy is a key to drive things. As a developer, you always focus on your task in hand, right? You have just a small task, so you are kind of a small cog in a big whole system,
yeah,
and you just focus on that one. But when you go progress as a CTO, you have to see that all the cogs are running efficiently,
mm,
and everything is smooth. So that's is a different thing, because there you have to make decisions, and you have to stand by your decisions. That's a key there. Of course, you do have again the same thing as a developer. Like as a developer, you have some ways to experiment. You do have some leeway to experiment in this one role as well, but still there are bigger impacts of your decisions as compared to a developer. If you do a mistake, you can of course revert back, you can
yeah.
test. I'm going a little bit more techie side of things,
Yes, yeah,
Michael. So you can test it, retest it, check it, okay, you can debug it. Here, yes, debugging is less. You have to make sure that your decisions are to at least try to get them right in the first time. But
mm,
yeah, that's a good part of of my role currently. And I think uh, uh, the difficult part, I would say, which is, I would say, yeah, I like less, in terms of when you move from a developer, um, you have to write a lot of documentation as a CTO. In a lot of you have to give inputs to the strategies and all the documentation, make sure all these things are there. Now these don't come naturally as a developer, because as a developer you keep you keep yourself very updated and keep yourself occupied within that scenario of developing codes and everything. Of course you do documentation for codes, but again, CTO, you have to do a lot of papers, a lot of inputs towards that business as well. And then you also have to understand the business side of things, which is
mm,
crucial for any CTO. You need to understand your business, right? Otherwise you can't make decisions in terms of tech. As a developer, you don't have to understand the business. You have a problem in your hand, you just solve it, put the code in, and just go to the next problem or next
yeah,
task. But here you have to understand that what is the business, where the company is making, profits, or what the sales is. So you have to more involve into your, a more entrepreneur side of the company as well.
Definitely.
So that is a bit challenging, I would say.
And I think it's interesting. It's it's different skill sets, isn't it? Like you said,
Yeah.
you move from a very technical, kind of practical, logical role. And one of our previous episodes, we actually delved very deep into the world of being a developer. We had
Hmm.
none other than someone in Daniel Flint. So
Oh yeah, I know.
yeah, so he was really good. He was talking about the worlds of kind of being a developer and the various different aspects. So if you haven't heard
Mm.
that, I invite you all to listen to that podcast.
Well, I would love to. Yeah.
So that'll be good. But yeah, you're right. It's a very different skill set in terms of that kind of developer role when moving to a chief kind of tech officer. And it's interesting what you said about lifelong kind of the learning aspect. And I often think, so when I kind of take people through kind of career coaching and they're wanting to transition roles and perhaps not sure where they want to go, the
Mm.
first thing I always start on is always values. Like, what are the
Yes.
core values that you hold? And of course, these change over time. That they might change over 3-5 year periods. They might change after big life events, but they're often things that stay with you. And one of my kind of biggest core values, and as I spoke about with Daniel, is lifelong learning. And I think whenever I look at roles, whether it's professional or personal, I always try and make sure that there's an aspect of learning involved in them
Yeah.
because that's what keeps me alive and keeps me kind of going.
Absolutely.
So
Totally agree with that, Michael.
is
Yeah.
that the same with you? Would you say?
Absolutely. I think that's the key there. If I see my career, I transition into different industries as well, and even my education is in different fields. Of course, it stays in engineering, but again, different fields of engineering. And I think one thing is very common, and which I think is key for anyone, is, as you mentioned, your values or your
Mhm.
motivation towards learning things. You can you can move in any career, whether vertically or horizontally, or even switch,
Yeah,
careers. Doesn't matter. Your one thing that is very extremely important is your values and motivation towards learning. That makes all the difference, I think.
definitely. And when you listen to various, I obviously with that learning kind of value of mine, I kind of delve into a lot of books, a lot of podcasts, a lot of kind of educational material. And the most common thing I've learned, and it's not, it's something that I've kind of tried to embody myself, is any big chief exec or any big person on a podcast like Diary of a CEO by Stephen Bartlett, which I recommend to everyone. I mean, there's not a lot of people who haven't heard about that podcast because it's got so big, but if you haven't, I really kind of thoroughly recommend you listen. But the most common trait, all of these amazing people who we deem successful, is they have a constant appetite of curiosity. So they're always
Yes.
curious. They always want to learn new things, and they have the insatiable appetite to be consistent. And those
Yes.
two things, consistency and curiosity, I always say, if you do whatever you want to do for 10 years consistently, and you're constantly curious, so you're not, after a year think, I know everything, I'm perfect. There is no limit to the potential and what you can achieve, and you will
Absolutely.
be a success in your own right, not by what society says is successful, money and all the rest of it, but whatever you think is successful. If you do it for 10 years and you constantly learn and you're constantly curious, there's no potential, no ceiling to your potential at all.
Absolutely. I think that's the key here. You just mentioned, that's the key: curiosity and consistency. Keep yourself curious. Keep learning things. I would say that if you, at a point where you think that you are the best, or you learn everything,
Yeah,
I think that's the point you stop learning, and that's
yeah,
the time you stop growing, I would say. It
yeah.
doesn't matter where you reach or what point you reach, I think. And that's something, if you can build in yourself or learn to be curious, I would say it's an amazing thing. It can do wonders to your life, to your career.
Yeah, completely agree. And I love what you said there. Yeah, once you think you know everything, you know nothing. I always say
Yeah,
because
yeah,
like,
absolutely.
especially in the tech world, of all in your industry,
Yeah.
like if you're, and let's be frank, if you're egotistical enough to think, right, I know everything. I mean, there's new languages, there's new updates, the platforms, like within days, weeks, months,
Oh, it's
you can be
always changing it
completely
very
left.
fast.
Exactly, exactly. So it's been really kind of helpful to kind of talk a lot about your kind of current role and the chief tech officer and what that involves, and kind of the things you enjoy most. It'd be interesting for people who perhaps they like the tasks, and that's the key thing for me. They like what the sort of tasks you're doing as a chief
Mhm.
tech officer. It'd be interesting now to delve into your background. So what are some of the perhaps the past experiences, if you were to highlight a couple, what do you think are some of those key experiences and roles you've done previously that have allowed you to kind of transition to where you are now?
Yes, interesting question, I think, Michael. So, um, from the very start, I can say that when I was in school time, I never liked computers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the first language I learned was C, C++,
Mm-hmm.
back in 2001, I would say. And I really hated that one. I don't know why. I really didn't like the way, perhaps, how I read it, or how I perceived that at that time. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought, no, I'm not going to go into, tech side of things. But I think over the time, gradually, when I get in touch at a later stage, when I, I I I have different experience, in terms of the tech side of things, and the languages now. I think that's why they're transition. Learning a C, a C++, or learning a Python is a totally different experience, and that's
Yeah.
why we see, a lot of people, they are now. Goes more into tech side, and or easily transition into tech side of things, even if their whole life is in non-technical field. And that happened with me, and that comes in a very interesting way. And I don't think so, most of people are like me in terms of transitioning into tech side of things. um, Earlier part of my career was in academia. So
Mm-hmm.
I was a lecturer teaching different subjects, of course not tech. uh, and then I moved into more research side of things, and then again the curiosity thing basically that comes into me, and I go into more and more into research. And there I think, oh, I have to learn languages now, because I have to do some code, some parts. And there I think that second the second interaction of with coding, that clicked with me. And at that time, and I think because of the curiosity we just mentioned, that curiosity element is, I think is very, very important here.
Mm.
And there, I start learning more into tech side of things, going more into. And this time, because of the curiosity and because of my motivation, it comes very easy to me second time. And
Mm.
I start enjoying it. Then I more moved into tech. But earlier part of my tech or interaction with tech is more research side of things. So I'm doing more research into technology and using technology to do my research. And that's how I transitioned more into tech side of things. um, and of course, education is also crucial here. I did my PhD in AI and machine learning. It's a part of tech, of course, not proper software development, but it is more about research, and but it's a cutting edge technology. Basically, you use of course programming to do all the algorithms, but again, the whole algorithm is the key here. And that's where basically you improve in your tech side of things.
Yeah.
Languages you can learn very easily, but it's algorithms basically, or how you solve a problem by languages. So, all these languages are just a tool for a tech person or a developer, but the key for any developer, or, a key thing which basically differentiates between a good and not so good developer is their problem solving skills.
Okay.
They just use programming to solve a problem
Mm.
in hand. And that's where basically I think education is also important. So PhD helped me a lot in terms of learning that skill, or harnessing that skill of solving a problem, or breaking down the problem systematically, very complex problems.
Mm.
And I think that also helped me to quickly move to the CTO level position as well, because during that time you are trained to manage things, bigger things, and with the bigger long term goals. You don't look at just the short term goal, you look at 3 years goal. And that is also helped me moving to that level quickly. But yeah, I assume that's my journey towards tech side things.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting to hear your journey. I'm sure kind of the listeners will kind of say the same. And I think the key thing for me to say as well is there's so many different journeys to kind of get into these places.
Absolutely.
And even yourself, it's a prime example that you weren't this typical person, the typical 8, 9 year old who was interested in coding and read these books and knew 5 platforms and programs by the time they were like 15 and all the rest of it, and you were kind of born that way. And that's often how society kind of deems people going to the tech space. So like, they came out the womb like knowing
Yeah.
Python and all the rest of it. Whereas you were completely different. You tried that aspect in that industry and it wasn't for you then. But you had that constant curiosity. And I think, what goes in mind with curiosity is self-awareness, I suppose, having
Yes. Yes.
awareness of kind of what your interests are, what your strengths are. And again, this is the whole premise of coaching, really, to help support people to understand that and bring it out. And then the most important piece, yes, once you gain self-awareness, is to action it. And it's really interesting how you kind of went almost full circle. And then the second time you had a bite of the apple and heard
Yes.
about coding, you kind of went off from there,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It all depends on the time when you're doing
Mm,
it. What your motivation is. Maybe as a school student, I didn't have that motivation, to learn that thing, and it felt me very, very hard in terms of grasping it. But I think when I came the second time, I was at different stage,
mm,
different times and different motivation as well. Because I think that makes a lot of difference. The motivation is the key. The curiosity is the key. If you're motivated enough, definitely you can do good.
definitely. And I think there's a balance, the whole, find a job you love and you'll never work another day. I think it's a bit too far fetched, so I would
Yeah.
argue. But I think there is some degree of truth in that, and that is the philosophy I sign up to in terms of kind of following your passion. And there's a very kind of two sides. I'm sure there's more than two sides, but two sides or schools of thought around this in
Mm.
terms of thinking you find something and you get good at it, and once you're good at it, you then have a passion or you have natural kind of innate interest, and that might be through society, your upbringing, whatever it is, and you kind of follow that as your passion and go from there, and then perhaps develop a competency in it. So there's something you already had an interest in and you
Yeah.
develop, or there's something you don't have an interest in, but after a certain amount of time, you gain passion in that area. And I think if I invite listeners, I suppose when they listen to our stories and they hear different kind of professions and pathways, I really want to invite them to think, what are some of the things I'm hearing, the tasks, the
Mm.
activities they're doing that I think that's really interesting. I would like to do that, And I would really kind of implore you to kind of write down on a piece of paper some of the interests, some of the strengths, some of the takeaways you found from this, and kind of sit and mull it over. Maybe have if you have a close partner, friend, whoever it is, and kind of say to them, and I always think about this when I was a child, I look back sometimes and say, what are the things I did without even realizing, or what are the things have
Mm.
experienced most joy in? And if you don't know, sometimes your partner or friend can say, whenever you do this, you got this big smile, just like you now. You got this big smile on
Absolutely.
your face.
Yeah, I do this a lot because sometimes when you do yourself, you be very busy, generally in your day-to-day life, and you forget about giving yourself feedback,
Mm,
and you're not the best person to give your feedback as well. Sometimes, your peers or somebody you think that is, looking at you, all the time, they can give you that crucial information which you miss, all the time, even you can't have access to that information. And I think the thing you just mentioned is, I think, really, really, really important.
definitely. And like your story says, you might have feedback on certain areas to develop, or pardon me, certain interests you have. But who's to say in 3 years, 5 years' time, it might completely flip on its head? So
Yeah.
it's important to kind of revisit these things. I think, like I said, with values are more things that stay with you for a period of time. And
Yes.
perhaps in 5 year cycles, there's no hard and fast rule, but they stay with you for a longer period of time. But I'm at the tender age of 28 at the minute, and my 5 year cycle, touch wood, will maybe involve kind of children. Who knows how my values will be shaped when I have children? That'll be a big life.
Yes.
So it's important, like values, as well as your interests and strengths, to kind of revisit these things on a fairly periodical basis. But kind of moving on, we had a good bit about your kind of current position where you are, perhaps some of the past experiences and your journey to kind of that helped you with that transition. I'm interested to come to a young Dheeraj, I mean, you're looking particularly young anyway, to be honest. I don't
Well,
know if it's a lighting or what, but you're looking good.
it probably is a lie because I'm touching 40 soon.
Oh, no, you shouldn't have said. You shouldn't have said. But perhaps a young Dheeraj, if you had a piece of advice or various pieces of advice that you would have given him before entering this kind of industry and this world, what would it be?
Oh, definitely a lot of them. I think everyone thinks like that, that they could have been, better when they were young. Uh, I think one thing uh, that is with me is to use the resources, better. What I had, when I was earlier, I had resources, but I was not where I was curious, and that was from very start. I was curious from school itself. I think that was part of me all the time, and I kind of keep that alive, all the time, because the curiosity gave me that power, that strength. I feel very confident with being curious.
Hmm.
But at the same point of time, if you are not managing all the resources around you with that curiosity, you mentioned the second part, the consistency part. I think I was not very consistent when I was young. So I think curiosity without consistency perhaps is not great combination. It won't take you far. So you have to have that consistency as well with curiosity, and I think these two things are really, really important, and that can do wonders to your life, even not just career, but in your personal life as well. If you're
Yeah.
curious about things, because you just mentioned that I'll just touch base on your point that you said in 5 years time your value change. They do change.
Mm.
Your motivation changes, your priority changes, right? Your view towards life changes. uh, there are different stages in life when you get married, when you get kids, and when your kids got teenage age, your everything changes around you, and
Yeah.
you as a human being changes, right? So change is the only thing that is constant around you. So you have to make sure that your values and your motivation should be according to that change, and they basically marry to that change. Otherwise it can conflict a lot in terms of that one. So now going back to that one, the curiosity is you have to be curious as all the time, but then you have to be consistent and make sure that your curiosity is rightly directed as well.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be very scattered, because if it is too scattered, you won't be focusing in one side of things. So I
Definitely.
think one thing that I really like to have being more consistent at a young age. It took me a lot of time to reach to these things, basically, because of it was not consistent. My curiosity was not focused into that one as well. And I think it's more, I just mentioned the resources as well, because when you are consistent with your curiosity, you try to find right resources for you all the time, and then you get to the resource at the end of the day. I think early stage of my as young years, he's very curious, but again he was not looking for right resources, and was not understanding the importance of resources of people around you who can give you right advices, who can guide you.
Mm.
um, I always think that if I would have somebody to give me advice at early stage of my life, it would be totally different. Sometimes you keep walking in your area. You don't look outside that one. You don't think out of this one, that there might be somebody to guide you, to help you, because at that age, I think you think that you're the best. You have the best knowledge of the world. And as soon as you understand that it's always good to take advice, it's always good to ask for help, and it's okay to ask for help. I think that changes everything. That can speed up everything in your life, and you can achieve things very, very fast, as compared to you just keep making your decision, keep giving you feedback. You just mentioned get a feedback from someone who, your partner, or someone who's staying with you, who can give you something, and that is good habit. I think someone can develop.
Amazing. And you know, it's really powerful. It's really powerful, kind of the words you kind of shared with us just then, Dheeraj. So thank you kind of for that. Because I think it's important. I think you know I suppose that is my role in a nutshell. I always say a coach does three core things because, coach, mentor, we have these words that are kind of thrown out, but a coach does three core things. They guide someone, they support someone, and they challenge someone. And those three, if you don't do one of them, it's incredibly important. You need to do all three. Yes, you
I
kind of
feel.
guide someone on the journey. A coach is it's an equal relationship. So it's not like a
Mm,
mentor where the mentor tells you what to do. The coach kind of guides you on that journey. They support you because you're going to have various things. You're going to have ups, highs, and lows. You're going
I
to
love.
be doing things you're not particularly enjoy. You're going to have various challenges that come into your life. So I need someone to kind of keep you motivated. But one of the most important things I personally think with a coach is they challenge you. And you might
Yes.
have friends who do perhaps the first two. They might guide you and
Yeah.
support you. But we always talk about the expression of yes man. You have like a yes man, go, yeah, sure, yeah, do that, do that. The good thing with a coach is they will challenge you. And they will say to you, this thing you're kind of aspiring for, you're chasing. So I'm chasing to be, I don't know, whether it's a consultant. And why do you
Mm,
want to do that? Well, because then I, will have prestige and I'll be able to buy a big car and I'll be able to do this. And okay, what's important about buying that big car? Well, if I buy a big car, then people like me. And okay, is there more to this? And I think having someone to challenge you at those early years can really allow you to kind of reprioritize and think what's actually important. And there's a real thing that kind of flows into my mind, and I forgot who it is, so apologies. I won't be able to give credit, but it's would I buy this if I was the only person on the planet? And it's
mhm.
really interesting. There's certain things, of course, that it doesn't apply to. But would I buy the BMW new series, whatever it is, and the
Mm,
whatever it is? No, I probably. If I was the only person on the planet, I'd get a simple little car because I wouldn't care what other people think about me, and it'll get me from A to B. There's so many things we do, unfortunately, especially when we're younger, and that's why
yeah.
I focus on people when they're within the ages of 25 and 35 to
Yes.
impress others and not to actually do what we want to do. I mean, does any of that kind of resonate with you in terms of that journey?
I think absolutely, Michael. The age you just mentioned, I think, is crucial years of your life,
Mm,
and it is because of geography. It's more about your age, and things, everything around that side of things. And these are really important as well because at that age, generally, that is the time where you basically, things can go really wrong and things can go really good as well. Because at a later stage, you can understand with your experiences things
mm,
better as well. Of course, there are exceptions. You can still, you need, someone there as well at every stage, because I said that things changes with you, right?
hmm
It's not like you just, have things, or, have someone at your side early at the stage and the later you're fine. You need someone all the time, I think, and everybody should have. And that's, I think, the crucial thing. But at that age, I think it's really, really crucial, because at that age there are so many things happen to you. You're exposed to so many responsibilities, and so many things around happening to you that makes you nervous, that makes you, excited at some point of time, and that sometimes make you go low into side as well.
mm,
So I think it's a big thing, Michael, if you're doing, because if at that stage someone passed through that one, there is less chance that they can go wrong at later stage.
mm,
So that builds you foundation, which you can literally use rest of your life to thrive, and not just in your career, I think in your personal life as well. If what kind of human being you are, it basically, that foundation makes you that kind of a human being. Your choices in your life, what you do, whether you do right or wrong or whatever, basically, taking the right things, basically, that is I think extremely important. So I would say that you're helping society as well, because society is made of people. It's not, all other things, all the assets. It's people who are basically representing societies. And if people are um, on right path at an early stage, that can help wonderful things, going forward.
yeah, nice, absolutely amazing, Dheeraj. Again, thank you for kind of sharing that, and I truly resonate with your kind of your last point around helping society. I think my first podcast or episode talks a lot about kind of why I'm doing this and why I'm in this profession. And I speak obviously about my values. but I speak a lot about my kind of wider why, I suppose. And there's the common thing around Simon Sinek, who has a book and a TED talk with Start with Why. Again, something I highly recommend people kind of either read or watch the TED talk or read his book. And my why is simply to inspire people to do what inspires them. And I think it's such a massive kind of ripple effect we can have on people's lives. I think about the amount of people, and I'm going to be really naughty. I'm going to pick on receptionists, only because I've encountered a few receptionists who aren't particularly happy. So I'm going to be really naughty. But I just think to myself, the ripple effect you can have on people's lives. I think, if they were in a role they enjoyed, they're going to come home, they're going to be probably more happy. Of course, we have good days and bad days. No one's perfect.
Yeah.
Perfectionism is a fallacy. But at least they're going to be in a much more positive state. Then when they come home, they're going to be more positive to others. And it's just going to be that butterfly, that ripple effect that affects
Absolutely.
others. So I think for me, there's no, it's not a no-brainer for why I'm in the profession I am and what I want to do. But I think it's equally important for others. How can they, contribute to their own legacy and helping others? Regardless of what profession it is, yours is perhaps an easy parallel in terms of the tech, but in the health industry, you're quite simply changing people's lives. Which is not kind of overstated. You are changing people's lives on a day-to-day basis. I think it's important for others for when they, get old and grey, and it's not something we don't want to think about, but they're on their deathbed. They can kind of look back and say, not just what's my car and what's my house and all the rest of it, but what are the memories I've created with loved ones and how have I impacted this world to make it a better place.
Yes.
So
true.
Perfect. Thank you, Dheeraj. And if people want to kind of connect with you going forward, they're interested in your past experience in terms of, you mentioned, a real variety in terms of developing piece, the AI, the kind of research lecturer, or perhaps your more current role in terms of that tech officer for Provide Digital. Where would be the best place for them to connect with you and continue the conversation?
Yeah, LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is the best place. I'm very, very active on LinkedIn. And make sure at least I check out all the messages and everything, or to answer any queries at least twice a day, even including weekends. Yeah, of course, some exceptions, but I'm very active on LinkedIn.
Perfect. So I'll make sure to include a link to your LinkedIn in the show notes then.
Thank you,
If
Michael.
people want to connect. So without further ado, thanks again for your time, Dheeraj. I'm sure there's untold wisdom and insight that will help the listeners today.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Journey. But thank you for your time.
Thanks for inviting, man. Take care.
No problem at all. Cheers all, and I'll see you on the next episode of Catapult Your Career.